Well, good evening, everybody. With all my heart and with all my love, I welcome you to our Anam Cara meditation program this evening. Wonderful to have you together. We seem to be separate, but we know that in the field of consciousness, we're right together. And so important, especially, satsang, one of the great refuges, one of the places where we gather together to keep the company of the truth as embodied by each and every one of you. And that highest truth, that's there. And sometimes our access to it may seem like it's less and other times stronger, but that's part of what is so important about satsang. We get together and collectively we keep that light alive. And so thank you for joining us this evening and bringing the light of your divine self, your living presence of the divine. Goes with you wherever you are, whether you know it or not. There it is, always with you. And so tonight we get to gather and get into that warm embrace, the loving embrace of the light of the divine that is our true nature. So what I wanted to do this evening is, and I think I'll do it right now, is I'm going to make a shift because there's been so much going on and have a time to be able to enjoy each other's company and talk and share whatever might be happening in our minds. And hi, Mary.
So nice to be here.
Oh, great to have you with us.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's a funny thing. Can't breathe, really.
Yeah, no, that's what we're here is to regain that spaciousness of being that gives us a little room to breathe. Mm.
Right. Be in the present moment.
Be here, be present,
Be here.
be with the loving presence of others too. That's what's so important. So how's everybody doing? This has been quite a tumultuous week, and it's interesting, from a yogic point of view. So there's an ancient text called the Vijnana Bhairava, and it's actually a collection of what are called dharanas. Those are kind of meditative practices, but short. How to invoke it. In the great tradition, Tantra tradition, non-dual tradition of Kashmir Shaivism, it's recognized the infinite is present at all times in all places. And we recognize that there are things that just propel us into that. It's not just like we have to sit and meditate and have all the right conditions and our posture is good and there's no, winds, it's not cold, it's not hot, it's not noisy, it's not all those things. No, the infinite doesn't care about that. It reveals itself in every moment. And but what it's especially revealed to us is when the mind stops. Mm? And so in the Vijnana Bhairava, as the great yogis noticed, and we can notice it to this day, when something shocks us, our mind goes still. Uh, and there's sometimes it feels like the stillness of numbness, but sometimes it's just like still and spacious. Mm. So in the Vijnana Bhairava, they'll talk about various ways that that happens spontaneously. For instance, one of the dharanas in the Vijnana Bhairava is a sneeze. Right? You go, and you sneeze, and for a moment, your mind becomes still. And what the yogi said, and that's where, like when you sneeze, there's a little joy comes up because your innate nature is joyous. It's the mind that gets in the way. So when you clear the mind, joy arises spontaneously. It also explains why if we just go, and then we don't get the sneeze, we feel disappointed. We didn't get the joy. you know? The mind didn't stop. We didn't get that little, oh. Well, that's a basic paradigm. But they'll also talk about how terror, fear, all kinds of things can stop the mind and suddenly open a spaciousness in consciousness. That can be um, really disconcerting for a person when they don't expect that. I'm going to go back to 9/11, and in our area around New York City, terribly affected by that. And there were people who were getting in touch with me for support and counseling and saying, but I don't understand. my mind became still, and this like bliss, this ecstasy was arising, and at the same time I know this is horrible, and the two wouldn't fit together. Um, but that ecstatic, joyous nature is unconditional. The ordinary joys, the ordinary things of the mind, are conditional. We're used to, oh, something feels good because it made me feel good. I had a satisfied desire, something. So we feel like there's a cause and effect connection to feeling good. The whole yogic paradigm, the whole Buddhist paradigm, the whole meditative paradigm is that that is our innate nature. The conditioned mind and its states are in constant flux. So we want the foundation of knowing and experiencing here and now in the moment, the solidity of who we are as the infinite, what our state is, what Buddha called the four immeasurable qualities are. So we can come back to that. Even while the mind is perhaps reeling from one thing, delighting in another thing, whatever that might be, that's the conditioned mind. So, uh, so that's part of the background that the yogis looked at as we go deeper into meditative practice, what we're capable of. Mm. And these kinds of events, like we saw with this election, and the shock for many people not, and they're not as affected. They may not be troubled by it or anything. But if we're experiencing that, and we have the good fortune to be doing practices, to be engaged in practice, engaged in contemplation, engaged in trying to understand the depths of who and what we are, the deeper dynamics of the world and the evolution of consciousness. It gives us a bigger perspective to be able to look at it. The conditioned mind we look at with great compassion. Yes, it gets flooded by, oh my gosh, what happened? What might unfold? What's going on? All those different things. So we keep trying to retrain it. Mm? So this is why yoga, even the some of the early research actually on the psychology of yoga, back in the 60s and 70s, was looking at yoga and meditation as a deconditioning process. Mm? Because so much of our reactivity is automatic. It's conditioned. Mm? We're on autopilot. Things trigger us. We have so many buttons. People play our buttons. Life plays our buttons. Why isn't that happening to yogis? Oh, they pulled all the wires off the buttons. That's our job. They get deconditioned so that we're meeting these events, occurrences, internal, external, in a very different way than the ordinary world. So we wouldn't see it reinforced in the ordinary world. We need Sangha. We're coming together because we're approaching life, the life of the world, the life of relationships, the inner life of the mind and heart, in a very different way than what is given to us through our culture, through our religions, through our politics. So this is a place to be able to go into that and unfold. How do I apply that? What's going on in my life? How do I live these high teachings or truths or experience? How do I integrate them? How do I get steady in that? So that's that's satsang. That's why we're here. And what a blessing that we can get together like this and support one another through all the challenges that come along. So, anybody have anything they wanted to say or share? Or
So that explains to me why I made big errors yesterday because I was not here. I was
yeah,
of another world. So for me, the only place to be is in this still point and to really lock down my practice every day. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah, because
yeah,
I have to live where I am in this moment, and I have shut down the social media, and I have shut it all down, and that's it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Then that's a beautiful way to be able to integrate practice. It's just like saying, oh, the mind gets carried away by these things. So, in part, I want to limit the number of things carrying my mind away. Oh, I can shut any number of switches off, but the inner switch,
Yeah,
that's another thing. That's what we work on as well. So it's not an either or, it's all. It's all.
right. And I remember when we were together in Bedford during that time, Lawrence, and the 9/11 time, and how
Yeah.
many homes I walked into to do healing work in, and that had the televisions blaring, and they couldn't figure out why their kids were not sleeping and why everybody, I thought, turn the television
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't let it in, don't listen.
And it's as we're examining the mind, because as meditators, well, we're examining the mind. We're stepping back and
Mhm.
examining it. It doesn't just shut up because we've closed our eyes or dimmed the lights. The mind is still going full tilt. So, but by stepping back, by practicing being detached and aware, calm and steady, detached and aware, witnessing, watching, watching with
Mm.
that awareness that is watching the movements of the mind, but not identified with them. Because that's the key dynamic. You start to be able to step back because you're not going to stop the mind. You don't get in front of that runaway freight train. You just get run over by it. You detach. You step back. You go, oh, right? It's like a raging river. You don't try and stop the river. You get up on the bank and you just watch it. And as the flood goes down, the river quiets, it's all good. That's meditative practice as well. How do we step out of the raging river and just come back to being sitting calm and steady, detached and aware, watching it, watching with loving compassion. Watch the mind with patience. It's understandable why it's reacting. It's understandable why it's so provoked. So we watch from a place of non judgment. Matter of fact, we watch from a place of loving compassion and kindness. So we bring that gentleness to the mind.
Well, that's what I want to be. I want to be the love,
Yeah,
I want to be that love feel,
yeah,
and I want to reflect that, I just want to be in that space.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or things that have been moving for people?
Thanks for all your great work, Lawrence.
Yeah,
You've helped me out a lot. Just with the state, being in the state of meditation, and yeah, feeling all the benefits, and but then interacting in the world, I feel like I really need to work on developing the skills to remain in that state while dealing with people and dealing with work and dealing with problems. And do you have any tips or advice to to keep closer to that state whilst dealing with the life that we have to deal with?
oh, sure, sure. And believe me, you're not alone in that. I mean, that's everybody's challenge is how do we integrate this? How do we stay with this? How do we stay present with the self, ourself, the self of all, in all? And a couple of things. One is one of the greatest gifts from the infinite is the sound form of the infinite, the thought form of the infinite. We call it mantra. Uh, right? So mantra is a way of keeping the mind in touch, close to its source, because the same source that gives rise to mind and all its thoughts, all its feelings, everything, it also that source gives rise to this pure form. Pure meaning it's absolutely connected. It's one with the infinite yourself. So if we're repeating Om Kalima in the background, in the foreground of our mind during the day, you first of all you start to realize how much garbage thinking the mind does, um, because a lot of what it's doing is not task related, it's not present related, it's not anything related. It's just keeping itself going, right? And So we substitute. We start more and more. And in meditation, same thing. You sit to meditate. You just start with just becoming absorbed in mantra, with the awareness of I am that. I am that throb. I am that infinite one that is in the sound form of whatever that mantra is. Might be Om Namah Shivaya. It might be Om Kalima. Now, Buddhist tradition, we would use Om Mani Padme Hum, or we'd use the Tara mantra, Om Tare Tutere Tore Soha. So these extraordinary mantras, at first it sounds like, well, there's a mantra and it came from somewhere or other. But as you follow mantra, meaning you become more and more absorbed in it, you start to hit the level at which all mantras are arising. So in profound, deep meditation, people will hear other mantras spontaneously arising because that's where they all arose from. That's where sages first heard them, was in the depths of meditation with the mind so subtle, so refined, so still. It could hear the throb of the infinite taking form. That form, mantra. So unlike thoughts, which just keep us engaged and wrapped around and bouncing around within the maze of the mind, mantra has the power to take us back to source. So that's a critical component of integrating practice and the state of meditation, the living state of meditation. Because the state of meditation doesn't disappear, doesn't come and go. State of meditation is continuous. Yourself is deep in meditation right to here, right now, as it'll ever be. If you're not experiencing that, it's because you're identified with content of mind. So what we also see from what you were saying, Peter, is that, the things that we get engaged in the world, the roles that we play, the relationships that we're in, all those things, they have an identity connected to them. An identity that we're used to putting on, like a comfortable coat or a shirt or whatever, the shoes we walk in the world with. These are all symbols of how do we cloak our true nature with these limited identifications. And then how do we step back without abandoning them? Doesn't mean, oh, I don't be a father anymore, I don't be a husband anymore, I don't be a this or that anymore. I don't identify with it. Now I'm fulfilling that role as Dharma, it's selfless service. My whole attitude and way of engaging it changes because the I drops out. There's the Dharma of the work. There's the Dharma of the relationship. It's being true to that highest thing. That's the consciousness we're bringing to it. And that's facilitated by staying in touch with that source through mantra. So these are great ways to be able to further integrate. And it takes time. It takes, the yogis will talk about, frankly, it takes lifetimes. That you're even here tonight, or even doing practices, never have met me or anything, that only happens as people have already begun practice. You've done lifetimes of practice to get to this point. Your momentum is continuing. We build the momentum, we build the strength of practice by continually engaging in it. And so we start to see also what the yogis pointed out thousands of years ago. Every moment is practice. What is practice? Practice means we're consciously doing something by choice. Well, if we're not consciously doing by choice, what are we doing? Oh, we're unconsciously choosing. Now we're just acting out the unconscious. Well, as one trained in Jungian psychology, I can tell you that unconscious, as you know from your own experience, is filled with all kinds of things you don't want to give free rein to. So we choose to be conscious. We choose how we engage. And yes, then some old patterns, really strong patterns, come up and derail us. And we go, wow, what was that? Sprung up out of the unconscious. Boy, I need to practice more. I have to strengthen my practice. I have to be ready for when a wave like that comes. And how do I bolt it down and stay steady?
Thank you. Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for coming tonight, Peter. Kristen,
Hi, how are you?
good.
Um, so I've not seen you in a long time. The last time I saw you was, I think, back in 2019, or it might have been 2018 at the
Uh,
Garrison Institute. And we spent a weekend really working on mantra,
mhm,
um, Kali, and that image that's behind you.
mhm.
So at that time, I didn't know what I was getting into, and it obviously stuck with me this whole time. But these days, I feel like Kali is coming for me. So
Lucky
if this
you.
isn't if this isn't the time or place, I understand. Um, but I'm wondering if you could remind me how we used this image, because I
Mhm.
believe we used it in combination with mantra
Right.
to interrupt these patterns.
Yeah. 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 Great. Great. Thank you for rejoining us, and I'm glad Kali's been pursuing you because you're her. So, um, so when we talk about this image is called the Mahakal Yantra, all right, and it's really one of the to me exquisite components of the Eastern traditions, how they found that there's all these ways the divine has reached out to us. Mantra is the sound form of the divine. Mm? So mantras arising, making use of mantra. Those are a sound form, a thought form, a vehicle for dissolving back into our true nature. Yantra is a pictorial form of the divine. So mantra is sound form, yantra is a pictorial form. There are many different yantras. Um, Not unlike pictorial forms in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. So on either side of the Mahakala yantra are two tankas. So in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, they would make depictions of the divine, um, the various forms and nature of Buddha and Atara and other great beings as tankas for meditation practice. So just as we can absorb the mind auditorily through mantra and sound form, just the silent repetition, a yantra serves as a focusing device. And the center of the yantra um, becomes the focal point. So in the Mahakali yantra, and this is true of many different yantras actually, you'll see the bindu, the black point. That black point is the portal, right? And everything about the yantra is pointing towards that. And I've written about it. I've written about it in some of the poetry books, and in the most recent one, there's a whole description of the Mahakali yantra and a poem that's like a meditation itself on that. And it's a way of gathering our attention, because attention is energy, attention is Shakti. The mind spews it out all over the place, so meditators were gathering it. So that's why it's gathering it to that point. That point, well, that's that portal. When we talk about a portal, what's a portal between? Well, it's between the finite and the infinite. It's between what we are identified with finite form, our personality, our gender, our body, our surroundings, our roles, all that stuff that we leave behind to enter the infinite. That goes beyond all forms. That's why to the form-bound mind, the portal appears black. Black means mystery, unknown, unknowable to the ordinary mind. Passing through that, we leave the ordinary mind behind. We leave all identification, all limitations behind. Then we can discover the luminous infinitude of radiance. That's our own being. Always, always, here and now, here and now, here and now. Oh, that's one of the keys. You see the set of squares with little bump outs around the yantra. That's called the four-gated city. The four-gated city, that line, you can't see it in this, but close up you would see it. It's made up of two lines, two parallel lines. So to get into the inner precinct of your divine nature, you have to be here, now. The lines represent the past and the future. You don't get in the door if your mind is in the past or the future. Because then that's all the mind's creation. The infinite, here, now, in all its fullness, here, now. Where is relief? Here, now. Where is truth? Here, now. Where is the expansiveness of heart? Here, now. Where is Om Kali Ma? Here, now. So everything, both in terms of meanings, symbolic representations, everything, are pointing towards these ways of what has to be shed that the ordinary mind clothes itself in so that we can enter that truth of who we are. That appears like nothing more than a black mysterious dot to the ordinary mind, but to yourself, boundless, boundless radiance.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a mirror. I mean, it's important to understand that yantra is a mirror. It's saying, this is who you are, and it's an entire scripture text manual on how to come to know it. Come into the present moment. Then go further. Go into the flaming energy. Wow, that's the mind and all the Shakti that's running through all the bound thought forms. Oh, we have to pass through that too. Then there's a circle around the triangle. Well, there's actually 3 circles. That too is telling a whole story. The 3 gunas, the 3 qualities that make up all of reality. Oh, we're going to leave that behind too. Then we're going to enter the black void. Well, you can't be scared. Then you'll be outside again. Then you start to come into that blood red, living presence of the mother, saying, come, deeper, deeper, deeper. So it's a portal home. It's a portal home. It's also a portal we pass through to be born. To take on form is the other direction. It's all the same to her. To yourself as Great Mother, the Divine Mother, Ma Kali, Ma Shakti. Call her any name, Tara Ma. She delights in both, creation and dissolution, all equally delightful to her. Oh, I'll bring something to mind here. This is from Kali's Bazaar. This is the poem, Kali's Bazaar. Kali's Bazaar. This is where your every footstep lands. Look around. For Kali, all things are possible. In Kali's Bazaar, the infinite becomes finite, and emptiness parades as form. In Kali's Bazaar, those born of love kill in hatred, blind to their delusions, flailing about in self-inflicted agony, destroying others instead of their own ignorance. In Kali's Bazaar, where the most loving, kind, and compassionate monks are silently tortured and murdered by deluded Chinese soldiers, where countless children, mothers and fathers, starve to death, their cries of hunger unheard, while people spend incalculable billions to watch a ball hit, kicked, thrown, or bounced to make a quickly forgotten score. In Kali's Bazaar, where your craving for reflections of yourself has led you into a hole where thousands of mirror shards give you glimpses of what you frantically seek. In Kali's Bazaar, your karma has deposited you. Peer through the darkness. You will see Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, sages and saints, Lao Tzu, Christ, Tara, Krishna, Mary, Kuan Yin, all actors in this final act of Kali Ma's 4-act play. Follow their light, marking her graceful paths to freedom. Oh, no need to hurry if you like the show. No need to worry if you slept through the earlier acts. This play repeats itself forever within Kali's Bazaar, the realm of time. When you finally tire of becoming the victim and the perpetrator, the hunter and the hunted, the hunger and the food, the embraced and the rejected, the sinner and the saint, the bound and the free, the seeker and the sought, the shadow in the light, it's simply time to wake up. Time to wake up. So even suffering is seen as a call to wake up, to discover where that suffering arises. This was Buddha's mission. When he left everything he had as a prince and wife and child and wealth, it was to discover what's the way to get free of suffering, of all suffering, forever free. This is the yogi's quest. This is the soul's journey. This is our quest. This is what it means to go beyond the delusions of the world, that suffering can be assuaged by consumption of this, possession of that, whatever it might be. We're called home to the fullness of being, the truth of that, which can't really be spoken of. But Buddha's formulation of the four immeasurables, or the yogi's Satchit Ananda, are ways of trying to point, what is this? What is that? What is the nature of who we truly are? Oh, we know the nature of the mind and body. We experience that all the time. What's the nature of our infinite being? Boundless loving compassion, boundless wisdom, unshakable equanimity, rapturous joy, all uncaused, unconditioned. They don't depend on anything. That's why it's unimaginable. For the mind, all its experiences depend on other things having led to that. It can't even understand what it is for that joyous, rapturous, loving, kind state to suffuse our being. That's why it can exist in the face of anything, because it's not dependent on externals. It's not dependent on external conditions or even internal conditions. The mind can be racked in pain, and you can know the ecstasy of your true nature. I know this from my own experience. The truth of who you are depends on nothing. So our practices are really aimed at how do we so clarify the mind that it becomes transparent to that, to that which we truly are. Then we can be in that no matter what's going on. If any Any other thoughts or reflections or questions? Kristen?
So then, in that case, would you say that you can watch the pain and feel the pain simultaneously?
Oh, yeah. Feel so. Um, this is very hard for the ordinary mind to get, um, and we're identified with the ordinary mind, right? So when we say there's pain arising, I'm not the pain. There's suffering arising, I'm not the suffering. Mm. It's like being with a loved one, and you have tremendous empathy, sympathy for what they might be going through. You're not going through it. You're present with it. Think of being present with your mind like that. Oh, mind, look what you're going through. So we start to be able to shift sort of the locus, the center of our identity from the ordinary mind-body existence we've inhabited for lifetimes, this is why it takes a while, to, oh, what's my true nature? That has been watching with a loving, compassionate, luminous quality. What illumines all experience? All experience. What illumines the mind and its bondage and its suffering? Consciousness. Without that consciousness, that luminous consciousness, nothing ephemeral about us would even exist, much less be known. That's a radically different way of engaging the mind. Even in my training as a clinical psychologist, you're trained to help people change their mind and make it a happier place to be. For the yogis, that's, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, because you know where this boat's going. So they took a very different approach. Now, both are practical, because they were also approaching it. You look at the yamas and the niyamas, you look at the Noble Eightfold Path. They're also rearranging how the mind works, how facile it is, and how agile, and how it can hold and be present. So there's transformative components to the practice for mind and body. But ultimate freedom doesn't lie in the state of the mind or body. Ultimate freedom is present because it's your nature. Not to be created, but to be known. And because, the nature of the mind is such that what runs through it, that's what we experience. It conditions our experience of life. The more we're running mantra through the mind, the more we're running loving kindness, compassion for ourselves and others through the mind. It changes the inner atmosphere. Practices of gratitude open the heart. They shift us. So the yogis, are very clear. We can be very skillful. We learn these skills of how to transform how to see the mind when it's stuck. Oh, that's not so hard, actually. Pain. It's a giant signal for what are we identified with. As soon as you're in pain, ask yourself, oh, who have I become now? Not how quickly can I get out of it, who can I blame for it, what went wrong here. No, let's first start with, who did I become? How did I become this? So these are some of the shifts that, as we become more and more immersed in practice and see, well, that's a practice that goes on throughout the day. Oh, who have I become now? Oh, I walked into a room. Who did I become? We put on personas. We change our clothes. We become the clothes. So the more we're aware of that, the more conscious we are about what are we choosing? What are we choosing to become? And Buddha, yogis, sages, practitioners, householders, to this day, learn that more and more we just choose to be the truth of who we are. And we come to know that more and more deeply through the practices, through encountering others who embody that and share their light with us. So we can live it into the world. Because the great calling of a human birth is to know the infinite as our own self. And the second great calling is to then serve that in all beings, at all times, in all places. So to know and to serve, that's what we're called on to do. In whatever the context our life has given us. Your life is sacred. Everything about it is sacred. When we see through the eyes of ourself, we see the sacred everywhere. So I'm going to shift now. And then we're going to do some mantra chant and sit in the stillness for a bit. So we come home to the fullness of the truth of who we are. And, in this marvelous field of consciousness in which we appear to look as if we're separate and different, we're not. We're not. We're as close. We're closer than the breath. That's oneness. So I'm going to shift now. So we're going to be chanting Om Kalima, Kali Namo Nama, Om Kalima. The Great Mother, known by so many names, all traditions, every child, every baby, Ma, Ma, Ma. It's so natural, so spontaneous to connect with that which gave us birth, that which holds us and nurtures us through every life. So we're invoking that direct knowing, bringing our mind, our body, our hearts, our soul into the awareness of being in the divine embrace. It invites us to completely let go, to be completely at ease in the infinite, the one that holds it all in its loving embrace. So we'll chant for a few minutes, and then we'll just sit in the stillness, in that silence. At the end of meditation, I'll ring a gong, and we'll chant a few rounds and close for the evening. But right now, just chant. And I really invite you to chant aloud, because as you chant, it also changes the breath. Chanting is an entire yogic practice. By chanting, we're actually doing pranayama. We're actually regulating the breath to help quiet the mind and ease the body. So by chanting, all kinds of processes are engaged with mind and body. Also in chanting, we're projecting this divine form of the infinite into the world for the benefit of all beings, not just ourselves, for all beings. That vibration, that throb of the infinite enters the world. So you serve as a conduit for that. So when we chant with that fullness. Then when we sit, we just become absorbed in it. Over and over, just the Om Kalima, Om Kalima, Om Kalima. Until there's nothing. If you enter the absolute stillness of the divine embrace, then there's nothing to repeat. There's no one to repeat. It's all gone. Back into source. Shri Kali Devi ki jai. Om Kali Ma Kali Namo Namah. Om Kali Ma Kali Namo Namah. Om Kali Namo Namah. Om Kali Namo Kali Namo resting in the awareness of I am that. I am the mantra. I am the source. That's all there is. Come to rest in that. We end with this prayer that may all our practices truly benefit everyone, and may all beings know complete freedom from suffering. And namaste. So we keep coming home to the truth of who we are. No matter what the distractions are in the world, no matter what the distractions are in the mind, we keep practicing cutting through, remembering. Zen is about remembering the truth of who we are. It's already there, it's already present, we've known it. We have to come back to it. And that's what empowers us to walk those qualities of the truth of who we are, that Buddha called the four immeasurables, that the yogis call Sat, Chit, Ananda. Sat, that which is the same at all times, in all places, the truth, eternal. Chit, consciousness, all embracing, all illuminating consciousness. Ananda, rapturous, loving awareness. The poor mind has to give it all these words. There's just one thing, all suffused with that set of qualities. That's the truth of who we are. And so the more we inhabit that, the more we dwell in that, the more we abide in that, the more it suffuses the mind and body with those qualities. So we can walk them empowered, fully empowered into the world. We've seen this in great beings. Think of Mahatma Gandhi, what he took on. First dealing with apartheid in South Africa, and then the rule of the British Empire in India, by abiding in that. Thich Nhat Hanh, abiding in that, and then helping to bring about the end of the terrible Vietnam War, even though he was shunned by his own country and his beloved fellow citizens. He stayed true. He stayed absolutely true. So what's the highest? What's the truth of who we are? That we're all capable of knowing that. We're all capable of living that. We're capable of living together in peace. We're capable of living together in ways that we can all flourish. And we see when the mind is caught in its deluded nature, that's where all those cravings, the lack, the wants, the needs, that then people act out, wanting more and more wealth, more and more power, trampling on others to have it, destroying the environment. All comes from the same source, ignorance. The same ignorance that catches us and puts us in pain. So that's what we're cutting through. And that's what, when we know the truth, we walk it into the world. We become luminous. We become beacons of that truth, that living quality of love, the transformative quality of that. So keep coming back to the truth of who you are. Take hold of mantra. Take refuge in mantra. Take refuge in satsang. Join us. Take refuge in the truth of who you are. That's true satsang. So I want to thank you all for being who you are. Embodiments, emanations of the infinite. In this life, in this world, called on to walk that light into the world. The light of love, the light of truth, the light of compassion, the light of the heart. Stay true to that, all times and all places. Om Kalima, Om Kalima, Om Kalima. And I look forward to seeing you again the next time we meet.